So the demand curve is the graph that shows the relationship between the price and quantity, okay? So, and we have a price in y-axis and quantity in x-axis. And that's where we studied the law of demand. Say when we change the price, the quantity will change. If the price goes down from PA, this is PA, this is PB, this is PC, okay? And then you have QA, QB, and QC. So when the price goes down from PA to PB, the quantity increases from QA to QB. Now, if the price goes up from PC to PB, so you can see the quantity decreases. The law of demand says there is a negative relationship between the price and quantity. So every time we change the price, we say that this is a movement along the demand curve. If you change the price, you can stay at the same graph and you move up and down. Law of demand, that's a negative relationship between the price and quantity. They don't move in the opposite directions. Okay, so also please don't confuse the quantity demanded and demand. So the quantity demanded, which is QD, is how much people are willing and able, plus able to buy at specific price. So if you have specific price P1, you have Q1. P2, you have Q2. That's quantity demanded. For every specific price, okay, we have quantity demanded. We cannot say at the price we have demand. The demand is a function that shows the relationship between the quantity demanded and the price. Everything else equal. It means I'm not going to use other variables. We are going to fix them. We keep them the same, and we'll see how that affects the quantity demanded. So the good example you can look at is when you look at speed, for example, and the distance you are running. You are keeping everything else equal, and just you want to see how far you can go based on a time or a speed. So you have one variable. So for example, you will change only your speed. So if I want to study how long it will take me to go from one place to another, I just want to use one variable, which is the speed. Okay, let me just clean this so I can show you why we do that. So remember when I say the example of going from Boston to New York City, there is a lot of variables that affect how long it would take me, how much time it can take me. So I know the distance is fixed. So it's like 280 miles, for example. But there is a lot of variables that will affect me. One of them is the speed, how fast I go how I drive. Second is that the weather, for example. Okay, traffic. So if I'm trying to just study the speed, I have to keep the weather the same, the traffic the same, and I only change. What if I go at 80 miles per hour? What if I go at 90 miles per hour? So what if I go at 60 miles per hour? So you can see I only change one thing, is the speed. The other stuff, the distance will be the same, the weather will be the same, the traffic is the same. So I'm trying to figure out the relationship between the time and the speed. That's the same thing we do when we're going to study supply demand equation. When we have a graph, we are trying to affect the price on quantity demanded. We keep everything else equal. We know there is other variables that affect the demand. How much you buy depends on a lot of variables. Depends on the product, depends on the situation. So for example, in our case, we say, okay, there are some variables that affect all the products. So now we say, first, when we're changing the price, the only things we're going to talk about is changing quantity demanded. But we know there is other variables. We have the one thing is related goods. If I'm buying the product, it's not just the price of the product that affects my behavior. Related goods. We talked about income effect. So are you remember we were talking about income effect? We talked about number of buyers in the market. Buyers. Number of buyers. We talked about expectation. Future income, expectation for future income, and future prices. Population affect how population. If increase in population will affect how much food we buy. If decrease in population will affect how much food we buy. Okay, so that's this one's. So we now we're gonna make the difference between increase of demand and increase in quantity demanded. Now we understand that if we change the price, so you have the demand. If you change the price, you are moving along the demand curve. If you change other variables or the determinants, okay, anything other than the price, we will shift the demand curve. If I change something else, not the price, because I say if I change the price, I keep everything else, I'm going up and down of demand curve. But if I change another variable like income or related goods or expectation or population, now I'm talking about changing demand. Now here, changing quantity demanded. This is a change in demand. So remember, just delta means change. That's all it means. Instead of writing the word change, I just put delta. So now I have to shift the demand curve to the right or to the left. If I change income, increase the income or decrease the income, I have to shift the demand curve to the left or to the right. If I change the price of related goods, I have to shift the demand curve to the right or to the left. Now, shift to the right. I'll come back and explain a little bit more about the variables, but change of demand, if I change it to the right or to the left, this is increase if I change it to the right, decrease if I change it to the left. You have to remember this, the thing, increase of demand means shift to the right. So I have the price, quantity. I start with the demand curve here. This is D0. If I shift it to the right, that's called increase of demand. What does that mean? So if I start at the price P0 here, I have quantity Q0 here. Increase of demand, people are buying more for the same price. Q1. Q1 is greater than Q0, but the price is the same. P0 here for Q1, P0 for Q0. So the increase of demand means people are buying more at the same price. It means also, okay, look at this. I can show you the other definition for increase of demand. I'm going to change the color. Look what happened. I can also have the same quantity Q0, but what happened to the price? One up. The price went up. What does that mean? People are willing to pay more for the same quantity. So the definition of increase of demand has two definitions. It could be people are buying the more, willing and able to buy more at the same price, or people are willing to pay more for the same price. You can go up this way, or you can go back to the right. And it's the opposite for decrease of demand. Decrease of demand, people are buying less at the same price, or are willing and pay less for the same quantity. So like if we look at the decrease on demand, means I will shift the demand curve to the left. So we have the demand D0, decrease means shifting it to the left, D1. So if I take at every price, P0, so people are used to buy Q0 here. Now look what happened to Q1. Decrease of demand means shifting. So when we're shifting the demand curve shift to the left, that's decrease. What does that mean? People are buying less at the same price. Or if I do also this thing, so the price P1, so people are paying less for the same quantity. So the price would go from P1 to P0. Okay, for the same quantity, people are paying less. Okay, so please, then now that's graphically how you can look at this. Now, how each variable, we talked about very important variable. We talked about income effect. So income, when I'm talking about income, first I have to think about goods. Is it normal or inferior good? What does that mean? Normal good has a positive relationship with income. Inferior good has a negative relationship with the demand for a good. So what does that mean? For normal good, income goes up, the demand for good goes up. Income goes down, the demand goes down. Okay, so that's what is normal good. They move in the same direction. Inferior good, it's opposite. So if it's inferior good, income goes up, the demand for good goes down. Income goes down, the demand for good goes up. That's all it means, normal and inferior. What is the relationship between income and demand for good? Okay, so one thing you have to be careful with when somebody says, if the income goes up, what happens to demand curve for a product? Next question you have to ask yourself. So if we have this question, so I have a product, good A, how that will affect the demand for A if the income goes up? So the first thing you have to ask yourself, what type of good I have? Is it inferior or it is normal? So if it's inferior, I have to say, okay, this good is inferior. If I make this assumption that the product is inferior, it means I just have the demand curve for a product good A. And what happens to the income? Income goes up, and I know this is relationship is negative. I have to decrease the income, the demand. I have to move it to the left. But if I assume that the good is normal, there is a positive relationship, and income goes up, I have to increase the demand. So I just say, okay, this is normal good. I have a price quantity. I have a good A, and the demand here, A, and it's normal. I have to shift it to the right, D1. Okay. Now we have to talk about relationship between related goods. We talked about two relationships, very important. So is it good A and good B? We have to define what relationship. If they are complement, they could be complement. They could be substitute. If they are complement, means they go together. You cannot have A without having B. If they are substitute, means A and B, they do the same thing. They have the same use. So for example, car insurance, car plus insurance. If you have a car, you need insurance. Car plus gas. Computer, you cannot buy hardware without software. Lettuce and salad dressing, that's complement. Printer plus ink. Substitute, you have product that do the same things. You can talk about Samsung and iPhone. You can talk about Ford, Sudan, and like the GM Sudan. Okay, so they are substitute in consumption. We consume them the same way. Complement, they go together. So then we have to figure out what is the relationship if they are substitute, and what happens. It's like common sense if you understand the relationships between the goods and services. So if I know if they are a good A and B are substitute, means they go the same thing. So if I change the price of one, will affect the demand of the other. So I'm talking about the price of one good, A, and they are moving in the same direction with the demand for B. What does that mean? If the price of A goes up, the demand for B goes up. What does that mean? So if I am trying to buy a computer Dell versus HP, it makes sense if the price of Dell will increase, people will move to buy HP. So the demand for HP will go up. So the price of one good will affect your behavior in buying other product. If the price of Dell goes down, the price of Dell goes down. That means people will move to buy Dell. Will they move from HP to Dell? It means the demand for HP will go down. So you can see there is a positive relationship. They go in the same direction. But if they are complement, they go in the opposite direction. Okay. So that's very important to understand these relationships. So complements have always, if you want to be good at this stuff, always build graphs and come up with examples. If I'm talking about complements, I know they go together. I can put printer and ink. I will use some common sense. So the demand for printer, the demand for ink. So I will start from here. This is like the printer is 150. Let's say we have 100,000 people buying printers. This same group of people, they cannot buy a printer without buying ink. They have to go buy ink too. So whatever the price, let's say price of ink is P1, we have 100,000 people buying ink. They could buy 2 for each one of them, or they buy 1, assuming they buy for each printer, we have 1 ink. So, but if I change the price of the printer, let's say I bring it to 50, many people will buy the printer. Say 200K people buy the printer. So assuming for each printer we have one cartridge of ink, we will have also 200. We are not going to change the price. We have the same price for ink. We didn't change the price of ink. Let's say $5 for a cartridge. We didn't change it, but we have more people buying ink. So you can see we have more people buying it. The change from the point A to B has nothing to do with the price. It has to do with the change in the price of the printer. That's what is called complement effect. So if they are complement, means they have negative, the price of good A and the demand for good B have a negative relationship. Okay, so that's the variables of effect. We have expectation for the future. We have expectation for income. What happens if your income is expected to go up or down in the future? You will be used the same method, but you have to be able to understand these relationships. Every time you have a variable, you ask yourself, how that will affect me? Okay, so that's very important. Please be sure to understand the difference between change in quantity versus change in demand. So change in quantity demanded, so A, B, and change in demand, increase or decrease. One is caused by a change in the price. This one is caused by anything other than the price, We cannot say the price causes the demand to shift. Never. It's wrong. If we change the price, we are moving up and down of the demand curve. But if we change something else, we have to shift the whole demand curve to the right if it's for increase or decrease to the left. Okay, that's very important. So I have one. So I want to show you this document I put online. I think it was there for a while. I want you to be able to fill this now. I'm going to share it with you so you can see it. You can download it. So it's worksheet. You have to be able to do all this stuff. Let me just show you the. Okay, I'm going to show you this Word documents that I have online. You have to be able to fill this now. So it's you have to define what is quantity demanded, what is demand. Okay, the basic definitions. Demand curve, demand schedule. It's a summary of all everything we did so far. You have to do law of demand. You have change in quantity demanded, change in demand. What causes the change in quantity demanded? What causes the change in demand? And then you have to put a graph that illustrated the change in quantity demanded here, and you give a graph that two graphs that, for example, shows increase and decrease of demand. Here, one graph, you can put graph 1, and then you put both of them, increase and decrease. And then change in demand means, and then you explain what causes the change in demand. Okay. Okay, let's give example here. If you want to illustrate some examples here, you can show that. Then we're going to do the same thing for the supply side, but we're going to do that later. But this is summarize all the things that we have in chapter 3. It gives you the overview of the model, how the model works. I understand what is quantity demanded, how I can graph that. I know what is demand. I know what is the demand curve. I know what is demand schedule, the law of demand, change in quantity demanded means, change in demand means, and then I will give some examples to show graphically how that works. So in supply and demand, you have to be able really to work with graphs. That helps, makes your life much easier. You don't have to memorize things. When you understand how to use the graphs, makes way much easier to use this model. Okay, so let's go now. I'm going to start talking about supply side. It's the same thing. There is no big difference. The basic definitions is that we're going to have to deal with, instead of dealing with consumers, we're going to deal with producers, sellers of the product. Okay, that's the only difference we have here. Suppliers, anytime you're talking about suppliers, you're talking about sellers or producers. The same thing. If I mention I have producers, means I'm talking about supply. If I'm saying sellers, then I'm talking about a supply. So this is keywords that you have to remember. Like we did in the demand, when you're talking about consumers or buyers, this is the same thing as saying demand. Same things for the supply. So what is the definition of supply? So supply side, talking about producers, sellers. Quantity supplied is how much companies or producers are willing and able. So remember, how much are willing and able to sell during a specific period of time at specific price. So every specific price, we have specific quantity supply. That we call it quantity supply. QS is just defines a specific price, how much companies are willing to supply. So remember, if you did some algebra, we have Y as a function of X. Every time I give specific value for X, I come up with specific value for Y. It's the same things for quantity supplied. Quantity supplied is a function of the price. How, if the price is $1, how much company are willing and able to produce at this specific price? If the price is 2, I'm talking about specific stuff. So the definition of quantity supplied, remember, how much companies are willing and able to produce for a specific period of time at specific price. So if I want to know how much you can produce in 1 week, at the price of $1. So I have specific timing and I have specific price. So I will know how much you can produce if I know the function. And the supply is a function showing the relationship between the quantity supplied of goods and services with everything else equal. So if I have everything else equal, we'll see what other things that are the same. I will have QS is a function of the price, everything else equal. That's called the supply. So the function that shows the relationship between the price and quantity supplied, everything else equal, we would define them as a supply function. So, and then you can have a list of prices and you have a list of quantity supplied. You can have price 1, price 2, price 3, price 4. Then you have quantity Q1, S1, QS2, Q. So that's what is the supply. Supply schedule is a table, so you can have a table like this. You have the price and you have quantity QS, and for every price P1 you have QS1, P2 you have QS2, P3 you have QS3. Okay, that's we call it a supply schedule. Based on your function, you can come up. So if you have a function that shows the relationship between the price and quantity supplied, you can just change the price and then you come up with quantity. You change the price and you come up with the, so that's from this table. Also, we can build what is called supply curve. Supply curve is a graph that shows the relationship between the quantity supplied and the price, everything else equal. So we have other variables that affect. It's not just the price. The company is not just because you look at the price and they say I'm going to produce it. The other variables that affect a company's decision to produce goods and services, we will keep them fixed. We only are going to look at the relationship between the price and quantity supply. Okay, so look at this. So here is the same market we talked about in demand side. We're going to talk about the market for cereal. There is companies that produces cereal and companies that sells the cereal. We call them suppliers or supply side. So at the price of 5, you can see if I go from price 5, the quantity supplied is 50. So at every price, I have specific quantity supplied. So for let's call point A has quantity equals 50 and price is 5. Then I can go to the point B. You have the point B has a quantity of 40 and the price is 4. And at the price of 3, point C, you have 30 and 3. D, you have 20 and 2, all the way down to last point, which is $1.10. So for every specific price, you have specific quantity supplied, but the relationship between all this table here, this we call it supply schedule. This is the supply curve and shows the relationship between the price and quantity supply. So we have a line, we can link the points and we come up with a supply curve. Now, so it is clear, you can see from the table, you just look at the table, you can just notice the price is going down from 5 to 4, 4 to 3, 3 to 2, 2 to 1. The quantity is going down. 50, 40, 40, 30, 30, 20, 20, and 10. Now, if we go in the opposite direction, so if we start from the price 1 equals 1, the quantity is 10. If we go to the price to 2, the quantity goes to 20. And then if we go to price 3, we have equals 3, we have 30. So you can see the price is going up, the quantity is going up. From 2 to 3, the price goes up. From 2 to 3, the quantity goes from 20 to 30. From the price goes up from 3 to 4, the quantity supplied goes from 30 to 40. The quantity goes from 40 to 50. The price goes from 40 to 5, the quantity goes from 40 to 50. The opposite direction, if this goes down, the quantity supplied. So you can see they are moving in the same direction. The price and the quantity supplied move in the same direction. So we call it a positive relationship. When things goes in the same direction, we will have we call it positive relationship. So if the price goes up, the law of supply says if the price goes up, the quantity supplied goes up. If the price goes down, the quantity supplied goes down. So that's the law of supply. Okay, the law of supply says if the price of good rises, okay, the quantity supplied of that good increases. Why? Because when the price goes up, people are willing to sell more. They make more profit. They make more profit. They will willing to sell more. So if the price falls, the quantity of supply that decreases. So if the price falls, means companies are making, or people are less buying, selling, are making less profit. They are willing to sell less. So what determines there is the problem when you are selling the same product? You remember we have a lot of companies that are selling the same product because it's perfect competition. But the problem, the companies, they don't have the same cost structure. So for example, if I'm selling milk, some companies group 1, so will cost them, for example, $2 to make it. Group 2 will cost them $1 to make it. Group 3 will cost them, for example, $3 to make it. So we don't have the same cost structure. But the problem, the price will be the same for everyone. The price is perfect competition, means the price of the market, you take the market. So if the price is 3, all of them, they will produce it because it makes sense, because they can make some profit. At least you are not losing, at least for group number 3. We'll talk about economic profit in the future. So now everybody will, but if the price goes from 3 to 2, this person will not be able to produce it because it costs them $3 to make it. They cannot sell for $2 and make it. So you only have 2 sellers in the market, 1 and 2. If the price goes to 1, you only one company that's willing to produce it at $1. So that's what you can explain this relationship. But if the price is 1, for example, let's start with the price equals to 1. So let's so we explain this law of demand. Law of supply, sorry. So let's say you have company 1, the cost equals $1. Company 2, the cost is $2. Company 3, it's cost $3. So they can control their price, but they have no control over the price. The price is a market. It's set by the market. So price is set by the market. If you are willing to make it at that, if you are able to produce it at that price or less, you can sell it. But if you can't, you just have to get out of the market. In the long term, you have to get out. So if the price of the product is $3, all these 3 companies are willing to make it because they can at least make in the company 1 makes profit, 2 makes profit. This one at least is not losing anything. This is like at least they are not making. But in economics, even if you make a 0 profit, is good. But just bear with me in this case. So now, what happens if the price goes down to $2? This company will not be able to produce it. They have to exit the market. So now you have only 2 companies. Means you can see the price goes down, quantity supplied will decrease because this company will not be able to produce it. But if you are at the price of 1, let's say a price equals 1, you only have company 1 producing in the good. But if the price goes to 2, either this company will increase the production more, produce more because they are making more profit, or also this company can produce it because now they are not losing because the price goes up to $2. When it goes to 3, it's the same thing. That's how we explain the law of supply. Why is it true even in real life? Okay. So you can see the law of supply depicts that this explains the producer's behavior. The price goes up, quantity supplied increases. The price goes down, the quantity supplied goes down. Makes sense. Okay. So So now we're going to talk about the change in supply. Remember, we talked about change in quantity supplied. I'm just going to go back and explain a little bit. Change in quantity supplied is the same thing as change in quantity demanded. It's caused by one variable. Quantity supplied is a function of the price and other variables. First, we're going to study each variable at a time. We are not going to study all of them. We will change one variable. We keep everything else equal. We want to see what is the relationship between the price and quantity supplied. We find out there is a positive relationship. Okay, everything else equal, increasing the price, increase the quantity supplied. But remember, the change in quantity supplied is caused by the change in the price. Everything else equal. When I change the price of a product, whatever good is here, A, when I'm changing the price, I'm moving along the supply curve, up and down. I'm not going outside of the supply curve to the left or to the right. When I'm keeping everything else equal, I'm changing the price. I'm moving along the supply curve. Now, what happens if we change one of the other variables? Now we have to talk about change in supply. Change in supply, we are moving the supply curve. So look at this. So we're going to understand first what it means change in supply. So first, we have companies at the price of 5, they are producing 50. Okay, you can see we start from 5, 50. Now, what happened? Something happened. The price didn't change, but the companies are producing more, 70. Why did we produce more from 50 to 70? One thing I know for sure, it was not caused by the price because the price stays the same. Something else changed. So also for 4, we moved from 40 to 60. Why the company are producing more or selling more from 40 is not because of the price. That's all I know. I know something else changed, not the price, because the price stayed the same. 4. 3, we moved from 30 to 50. 2, from 20 to 40. So you can see what this means. The companies are willing and able to produce more at each price. At every price, companies produce more. That's called increase of supply. When we say increase of supply, it means at every price, companies are willing and able to produce more at every price. You can go from 1 to 5. You can see 50 becomes 70 for the same price, 40 to 60, same price, 30 to 50, to 20 to 40. This is caused by something else, not the price. So that's increase of supply. So first, increase of supply, it's shifting the supply curve to the right. That's what first you have to remember. Anytime we're talking about increase of supply, we're shifting the supply curve to the right. What does that mean? Companies are willing and able to produce more at every price. Every price we have more. Now, decrease of supply, you can see at the price of 5, we move from 50 to 30. So you see, we're going back to the left, 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 left. So for every price, when we say decrease of supply, means we are moving, shifting the supply curve to the left. So decrease is same thing as demand. We are shifting to the left. Increase, shift to the right. You have to remember this for both graphs, demand and supply. Left means decrease, right means increase. But what does that mean? Decrease means at every price, the company are producing less. So at the price of 5, the company decreased their production from 50 to 30. Why? I don't know, but for things what I'm sure is not because of the price. The price stayed the same, and we moved to the left. 4, the company is willing and able to produce less at 4, which is from 40 to 20. We moved to the left. The price stayed the same, but the quantity changed. So that is not changing in quantity supply. That's change of supply. When you have the companies that are producing less at each price, that's decrease of supply. It's shifting the supply curve to the left. So remember, shifting to the left is decrease, shifting to the right is increase. That's the one thing you have to remember. So change in quantity supplied is caused by changing the price, everything else equal. So everything else equal. If I change the price, there is a change in quantity supply. Change in supply is moving the whole supply curve to the right or to the left. Is caused by something else other than changing the price. Okay, so let's do this again so I will be sure that you guys understand the difference, like we did with the demand. I don't want you to confuse change in quantity supply versus change in supply. S, this one is caused by change in a price. What does that mean? If I have a price here, you have a quantity, you have a supply curve S. If I change the price, I'm moving up and down of the supply curve. If I change the price. If I change something else, not changing the price, the negation of this one. If I change something else, but not the price, I will have a change that will either, that's called change in supply, means I have to shift the supply curve either to the right, which is increase. This is a right, it's increase, S1, S0, or to the left, decrease, S2, that's to the left, is decrease. Okay, so I cannot say increase or decrease of the price of the product, and I'm talking about supply. If I am changing the price, I have to talk about changing quantity supplied. What does that mean? A movement along the supply curve. If I change something else other than the price, I would change. Remember, quantity supplied is a function of price and other variables. When I'm talking about the change in quantity supplied, I'm keeping all this stuff the same, but I'm changing only the price. In this case here, I'm going to change other variables one at a time and see how that will affect my supply curve. So it's very interesting. So here's how that works. Change in the market. The first thing, something happens in the market. That's the first things you know. You will have cases that you have to do the analysis. So a new things happened.
Yes?
Professor,
I had a question.
Yeah?
So you said like if the company sell out its no profit, they still sell it or no?
Yes. Here's what happened. So, and I know this, but if you take, you can take this 202 economics, you will understand. So, economic profit. I'm just going to explain this a little bit, but don't you just I'll explain for a second. Then I don't want you to keep thinking about it for the rest of the class, but I will explain it a little bit so I can be sure that I'm not losing you. So, economic profit versus accounting profit. So even if you make zero profit in economics, you're still making what is called accounting profit. Why? The way we measure the cost here is not the same here. Because here includes everything in the cost. This one does not include everything. So even if you make zero profit, you're still good. You'll be fine because you will still make an accounting profit. So in economics, we say make zero economic profit is you're in good position. So for example, the way it is good. So let's say I'm selling a product. The cost I begin to include here everything. If myself, I will get paid. I'm working for myself, I get paid. If I have let's say I'm using my garage, for example, I'm going to count my rent. I'm like working for myself. Here, if only includes things that has the receipts. You cannot say I pay my rent. It's your rent. So it's included here, but it's not included here. Even if you make zero profit in economics, you're still good to go because you will make accounting profit at the end. That's the difference. But you will see if you take the other economics class, you will see ways that this is the difference between accounting versus economic cost calculations. But for us in economics, when you say zero economic profit, it does not mean exactly you're making zero profit. It's just because you include all the costs. Everything is included in economic calculations versus accounting profit. So yes, just keep this in mind. In perfect competition, most of the time the profit is economic profit on all companies is zero profit. So now let's go back and I'll ask you how to use this model. So the first things you do, you will have a graph like this. You put price, you put quantity, you put the name of the good here. You build the supply curve or the demand curve. Then you ask yourself, something changed in the market. What happened? New variables. You will see this. Then when you say something new happened, you ask this question, is it the price of the product that changes? This new thing, is it the price? If it's yes, then I have to just move along the supply curve. I don't have to go to the left or to the right. If my answer for this question is yes, I am going to talk about changing quantity supply. Sorry, I put the demand curve here. I'm talking about the supply curve. S. So if I say what happens, what is new? If the price of the product changes, the answer is yes. I'm going to talk about movement along the supply curve or the demand curve, either way. If the answer is no, something else, I don't know what it is, but something not the price, else, something else, not the price. The answer, no, this new thing that happened is not the price. Then I have to talk about shifting the supply curve and shifting the demand curve. It is the way you should think. It's like this. I have first, I'm going to start from, like most of the time when you're doing the economic analysis using supply and demand, you will start from the position that, assuming that nothing happened, I will have supply or demand curve. Let's say supply curve. Then the second, that's the first step. The second step, I will say new things happen. What happened? What is new? Then I will ask this question: what is new? Is it a price? If it's yes, I'm just going to move along the supply curve. If the answer is no, it's something else. I'm not going to say what it is. Just I know it's not the price. So now I have to think about it. Might be shifting the supply curve to the right or to the left. So change in supply is a move in the whole curve. It's caused by something else other than the price. Change in quantity supplied is a movement along the supply curve. It's caused by change in the price. Here, change in the price. Here, not change in the price. Okay, new variables. So, and then you have to be sure also, sometimes we're going to talk about that when we put all this together. Now, you have to be careful. It's not just like, sometimes you have to know, is it affecting the demand or affecting the supply? What happened? Is it affecting the demand or supply? Then how? We're going to talk about the economic analysis using supply and demand. Okay, so this is the summary of everything we did. So if you have started from this blue line, now something new happened. It's not the price. We'll shift the supply curve to the left. That's decrease. Shifting it to the right, it's increase. What does that mean? Decrease means the companies are producing less at the same price. If you go to decrease, for example, you are moving this way. For the same price, companies are producing less. If it's increase, the companies are producing more at the same price. That's so. Remember, you have to be able to define first. Is it shifting the supply or quantity supply? If it's yes, then you say how much is it, increase or decrease? Increase of supply, shifting the whole supply curve to the right. To the left is decrease. So please, you have to be able to do this. So let's do this one more time so we can be sure that you guys be able to. It's very powerful analysis you do. So first, always you build graph. You put your supply curve as 0. Then I say, okay, now what happened? Something changed in the market. If it's not the price, if it's the price, for example, I have to stay in the same graph. The price goes up, the quantity supply increases. I'm not moving from the graph itself. I'm staying a movement along the supply curve. If the price goes down, the quantity. Now, if it's something else, this is changing the price. But if it's something else, not the price, then I have to think about shifting the supply curve. So this is not the price. This is not the price. What I have to do, I would just do the same thing as the price, quantity, S0. No, not the price. Then I will think how that will affect the supply. If it's increase, I have to shift it to the right. If it's decrease, I have to shift it to the left. Okay, so that's basically the summary for this things. Now, now remember, now I'm going to sell. So we have quantity supplied is a function of the price of the product, but other variables. The other variables I'm going to talk about is this ones. Price of related goods, cost of inputs, expectation, number of sellers, productivity. We have to know how. So none of them has to do with the price of the product. Okay, look at this. Nothing, not the price of the product. So now, if I'm not talking about the price of the product, now I'm talking about the shift of the supply curve. Because if I was talking about the price, I have to move along the supply curve. All of them, these variables, has nothing to do with the price of the product. So it means I'm going to shift the supply curve. We're going to talk about related goods in production. We're going to talk about the cost of producing goods. We're going to talk about expectation for the future, number of sellers, and productivity, how each one of them will affect the supply curve. So remember, we have the price of inputs, expectation, number of sellers, technology. Okay, that's each one at a time. So let's talk about the price of related goods. We talked about, be careful, we've talked about related goods in consumption when we're talking about demand curve. I'm buyer, I looked at, when I'm trying to buy a product, I have to look at the other products that relate to this goods. They have to be substitute in consumption, I'm talking about two goods that do the same things, or they are substitute or complementary product, they go together. Okay, we can talk about the same things in supply, but we have to talk about related good in production. Okay, when we're talking about related good in production, they can be substitute in production. In production, what does that mean? It means I can produce one good or the other. So remember, we're talking about production. So substitute in production, I can produce one or the other. In consumption, we say we can consume one or the other. In the production, we say we produce one or the other. Or they are complements in production, means they will produce them together. We cannot produce one without producing the other. So substitute goods in production versus substitute good in consumption. When I'm talking about the demand side, I'm talking about related goods in consumption, but now we're talking about production side. So for example, for Ford company, if we're talking about Ford, they can produce one good or the other. So remember, so substitute in production. A lot of companies will face this. So Ford, for example, can produce F-115, or they can produce SUVs. They use the same resources to produce one or the other. So they have to choose. If they produce more of SUVs, they have to produce less of F-150. Okay? So if the company decides to increase, given the same resources, if the company decided to produce more of SUVs, means they have to decrease the production of 150. I can talk about Apple company, for example. They can produce iPhones, or they can have iPads. So if the supply for iPads, supply for iPhones, if they increase the production of the iPad, they have to decrease the supply of iPhones because they are substitutes in production. Okay, so you can see the increase. I'll give you another example. So let's make a little bit more sense to make just to understand what I'm saying here. I'm going to take a piece of land. You have a farmer has a piece of land. So let's say he decided to split this land on half. He can produce carrots here and tomatoes. So we have a supply for tomatoes and you have a supply for carrots. So I will have the supply curve. This is the price, this is the quantity, supply for carrots, and I have supply for tomatoes. Next, if he decides to change the supply of tomatoes, it will affect the supply of carrots because we have the same resources used to produce one or the other. So if they decide to decrease, let's say they move to decrease, means they have more space, you can increase the carrots. So if they decrease the quantity supplied of tomatoes, means they will increase the production of carrots. This has nothing to do with the price of carrots. It has to do just with decisions of producing potatoes. So let's say they used to sell potatoes for $1, and he produced in from half of the land, and then he used to sell carrots for $1 and use the half of the land. Now let's say the prices of tomatoes goes down to 50 cents, means the production of tomatoes will go down. So now if they produce less, means they have more space, they increase without changing the price of the carrots. You can see he increases the production of the carrots at the same time. See? So the decision, it's based on the price of tomatoes affected the supply of carrots because they are substitute in production. You produce one or the other. Now we have a complementary product. So remember also we talked about complementary product in consumption, complements. You have to be careful to understand this. So we have complement, A and B are complement in consumption. Means if you consume this one, you have to consume this with it. If I buy ink, I have to buy, if I buy printer, I have to buy ink with it. If I buy a car, I have to buy car insurance. They go together. Now, we can talk about the same issue with production. Complement in production. If I produce one, I have to produce the other. So there is a difference. Complement in consumption versus complement in the production. This ones they be consumed together. This one they will be produced together. A and B are produced together. Good example to understand complement in production. We talked about complement in consumption. We know they go together. Printer, ink, car insurance, and all that stuff. So we can think about something that we can produce together. If you produce one, you cannot escape producing the other one. And then I will give you examples so you can understand. So let's look at the example. So I'm giving you example in real life so you can see how that works. So like running, so you are a person number one that produces, you run and sweating. You have control over running, but you don't have control over sweating. If you run, the longer you run, the more you sweat. You are producing both of them. You are the producer. You run, you sweat. Less you run, the less you sweat. So they are complement in the production. You cannot control the sweating, you control the running. Okay? The supply, how much you sweat, how much you produce of sweating depends on how long you run or how fast you run. Okay? So if you want to change the sweating, you change the running. So because they are complement in the production, they will be produced together. Okay, so this is very important to understand this. So complement and substitute in production. So you can look now at supply curves for two goods. So you have the price, the quantity, price and quantity. Let's say they are substitute in production. So you have S1, S2. So let's say Ford, for example, F-150 or SUVs. So the price of F-150 is 30,000. Let's say they sell 1 million. So the price of SUV, let's make the same price also, and then they are producing, let's say, 800,000. If Ford is making more profit in F50, they will, if the price of F50 or they're making more profit in F50, means the price will go up, they will produce more. But where Ford will come up with resources to produce more on F50? They have to take it out from, because they have limited resources. So they have to take it out from the SUVs. So what does that mean? It means they have to decrease the production of SUVs, you see? And then we are decreasing. So because they are substitute in the production. So increase of the price of 150 makes more profit, they will produce more of it. Means they have to take resources from SUV and give it to F-150. And the opposite, if the price of F-150 goes down, they make less profit, everything else equal. Remember, I'm just changing the price of related goods, everything else equal. Let's say 20,000, means they have to produce less, they have more resources, they can increase the production of F-150. So that's substitute in production. Now, complementary production. So just look at the leather and the meat. So you have a farmer, you produce meat, for example, beef. This is complement in production. So you have a farmer, a rancher. You produce beef. Here's the price, here's the quantity, supply. But at the same time, every time you want to meat, you have to sacrifice a lamb or a cow or something. So all the same time you are producing the skin of the cow. So if the price of the meat goes up, okay, the price goes up from P1 to P2, you're going to produce more beef. But anytime you produce more beef, you kill more cows. It means you have to increase the production of the skin. See, you are changing this, but when you change beef, you produce more of the skin. You cannot increase the production of beef without sacrificing the cow. If you sacrifice the cow, means you are producing more skin. If the price of beef goes down, means you are producing less beef, means you are killing less cows, means the supply for skin will go down. So they are complement in the production. They go together. Okay, that's what is related good in the production. So one thing I want to be sure, anytime you talk about complement products, you have to define, is it complement in consumption or complement in production? If they are complement in consumption, you're talking about the demand side. If they are complement in production, you're talking about the supply side. Okay, so that's the difference. You have to be careful. The cost of production. So every time you talk about the cost of production, it is very important. So is it easy to explain? That makes makes sense. So if I'm producing a good, this is the price. This is supply for good. My production depends on how much I pay for wages, for example. So if, let's say I pay $7 for my workers. So based on this salary, I will define, and the price of this my good I'm producing is $10. Now I decide based on this cost, I'm willing to produce 1 million units. But what happens if the wages went down to $5? Now look, the cost of production goes down, means I'm making more profit. I will be able to produce more. So inputs means our cost of production has a negative relationship with the supply of the good. So if the price of inputs goes down, so price of inputs goes down means the cost of production goes down, means the supply of a good will go up. So Starbucks, for example, use coffee beans. The cost of production of coffee, it depends on the coffee beans. Okay, workers. So if the price of coffee beans goes down, Starbucks will increase the supply of coffee. Just cost them less to produce it. Dunkin' Donuts, same thing. So there is a first, anytime you're talking about the product, you have to understand that's what economists do. So if I'm trying to understand the effect of an event that happens in Brazil, for example, I know Brazil is the biggest producer of beans. I just say, okay, I know this will affect Starbucks because they use a lot of beans if they are buying it from Brazil. Okay, oil is the same thing. The price of gasoline. What happened to the price of gasoline? Supply of gasoline depends of the price of oil, because oil used to produce gas. So the supply for gas depends on the price of oil. If the price of oil goes up, the supply for gas decreases because that's cost of input. Okay, this one is a little bit much easier. So expectation. So future price. So I'm a company that produces good. I'm supplying this good. And I'm, let's say housing, for example, I have apartments, I sell apartments. I'm selling apartments in Boston for 150K. And I have 1 million apartment I want to sell. So what if I know that the market for apartments in Boston will go up high next month or next year? I know I can make more profit. So what I have to do, I'm not going to supply the whole amount of apartments. I will decrease number of apartments I'm going to sell. I want to keep some of them so I can sell them in the future with higher price. I might say, okay, no, I'm not going to sell all of them. I'm going to sell some today with 150,000, but I can wait till the price goes up. If I know the price in the future go up, I'm going to decrease my number of apartments today because I know I will make more profit in the future. So you can see now I'm decreasing my supply of apartments. But if I know that, so imagine you have 10 apartments and you know that the market will crash next week or next month. What you can try to sell as much as you can. So you will increase your supply of apartments. So you have to think about future expectation for the price. What happens in the future? If you know that the price will go up, you will keep them. You own whatever asset you own. Your decision to sell or to buy it depends also about future prices. So if I own, let's say, a stock of Verizon, for example, I have 1,000 of them, and the price today is $50 a share. Should I sell today or not? The question depends on what I think will happen to the future price of the stock of Verizon. If I know the price of stock will go up to 60, there is no reason to sell them today. I may sell a little bit of them, but I will keep till the price goes to 60, I will sell them. But if I know that the price in the future will go to 40, I say, okay, based on my analysis, the future expectation for the price of rising stock will go to 40. I'm going to sell them today. All of it means I will increase my supply, and because I'm going to buy it in the future for cheaper price. Or if I don't sell them today, I'm going to lose. So that's like in the investments thinking that people do. Should I buy now or not? Or I sell? Depends what I think about what happens in the future. Should I buy a house today or not? Depends what I think about the price of a houses. If I'm trying to buy an apartment, I have to understand what's going on in the price of. I mean, I'm talking about suppliers right now. Should I sell my apartment? I'm a builder or constructor. I build apartments. I have a lot of them. Well, should I sell all of them today, or I keep some and sell them in the future? So you can see there is a companies, they just switch between selling versus renting. I own a company, I own a couple of apartments. Should I sell them right now or just rent them and wait? If I know the price of apartments go up, I just rent them for a year, 2 years. I will pay my mortgages in the rent, and then 2 years the price will double or increase by 20% or whatever, then I will sell them. But if I know that the price will go down, why I have to rent them? I just sell them today and wait, and then I know the price will come down and buy them back one more time. So that's how you use the supply and demand to make your own decision, as a supplier or as a consumer also. Okay. Number of sellers, that's easy one to understand. So I have one company that produces good, one company. This is the price, this is the quantity. The price is $5. I am producing 100 units. Then another company came, say, oh, you are making a lot of profit. We have another company that produces S2. So increased number of sellers will shift the supply curve to the right. Okay. Decrease of number of suppliers will shift the supply curve to the left. So number of sellers is just, if you increase number of sellers, means you are shifting the supply curve to the right. If you are decreasing number of sellers, you are shifting the supply curve to the left. That's decrease. Now, productivity, it's the same thing as cost of input. It's the same thing. So if I started with a company that produces a product S1, and each worker is producing 10 units per hour. So let's do an example so we can understand what is productivity first. Then I explain this in chapter, I think, 1 or 2. So let's do this. So I have one worker. I'd say that's one worker. He works, they produce 10 units per hour. Okay. And this worker, I will pay them $10 per hour. It means for every unit I produce, every unit, so it produces 10 units, I pay him $10. For every unit, 1 unit, I pay him $1. Now, if I come up with new idea or new way I can do things, instead of producing 10 units, he produces 20 units per hour. Assuming that I will pay him only $10 per hour, so $10 per hour USD, and he produces 20 units, means for every unit, 1 unit, it costs me 50 cents. So now my cost of production is going down. So if the cost of production going down means I make more profit, I'm willing to produce more. Okay, I will just, instead of having this guy work 1 hour, I will make him work 2 hours or 3 hours or 4 hours because he's making more profit for me. So productivity increases. Increasing productivity, keeping everything else equal, will lower the cost of production. Okay, so then you are going back to the first question that I asked, the relationship between inputs and supply. So increasing productivity, everything else equal, the wages stays the same, means cost of production going down. I'm making more profit, means I will increase my supply. Okay, so that's what happens when we come up with new technology. Like the one things you can think about today, technology effect, it's productivity also, like price of gas, of oil is going down because, why? Because we come up with new technology to produce oil cheaper. Okay, that's what affected a lot of things like that. Every time you come up with new way to do things, come up with new technology or increase the productivity of people, you will change the supply curve of the. In the old days, like fracking in oil industry, it's a good example. We have the oil, but it's deep. We didn't have the capacity to dig all the way down to it. Now we will have that, so we can produce oil cheaper, and that's why we have in US doing right now a lot of oil coming from the United States. Okay, so this is the summary of everything we talked about. Okay, and I will go back the same question that I did for demand. And so every time you have something changed in the market, you ask yourself, is it has to do with the price of the product itself, the price of the product itself, not other goods. If it's yes, I'm talking about change in quantity supplied, change in quantity demanded, change in quantity supplied. If it's not, I have to now think about change in supply and change in demand, because it's nothing to do with the price. So change in price will change quantity supplied and changes quantity demanded. Not the price will change the supply and change the demand. So the first things you want to do, what happens in the market? Is it affecting the supply or demand? So this is the process of doing economic analysis using supply and demand. We're going to go through some examples. The first things you see, what happened? So let's say I'm starting from a point A. We have S0 or D0. Then the second thing is you say, okay, what happened? What is new? What is new in the market? This is blah, blah, blah happened in the market. Then I ask myself, the third question is, did it affect the demand or supply? Sometimes it will affect both of them. Sometimes most of the time, one or the other. But in some cases, don't be surprised if you find one variable affected by it all. Then if I find out the demand, I say, how? Is it increase or decrease? Is it negative effect or positive effect? If it's supply, is it up or down? Okay, that's very important to do. So that's the summary of everything I talked about so far. So we have, first, we start from here. If we go up, that's increase of quantity supplied. Down is decrease of quantity supplied. This is caused by change in the price. The blue line caused by, or if something else but the price, we can shift the supply curve to the right. That's increase. Means the companies are producing more at every price, or shifting to the left, which is decrease of supply, or that means that we are producing less at every price. Okay, so now we talked about both of them. Now we can talk about what happens when we put them together. Now we talked about demand. We know how people behave in the marketplace. Then we're going to talk about we talked about producers and sellers, and we figured out how they behave in the marketplace. Now we want to know how the price is determined in the market. We say, okay, what happened? We will talk about the equilibrium. We're going to put the supply and demand together. We build the model and say, this is how the price is determined, which call it the equilibrium. We will talk about price equilibrium and quantity equilibrium. Okay, so the market at equilibrium means the quantity demanded equals the quantity supplied. So when we say market at equilibrium, means QS equals QD. We want to know at what price we will have this situation. Equilibrium is like, if you study physics, sometime when do you have it? Like if you have one force that pushes this way and one force that pushes this way. If we have equilibrium, means this F force 1 and force 2 are equal. So you have the force of supply and you have the force of demand. One is pushing the price up, one is pushing the price down, like this. So if you think about a little bit physics here, that's where the equilibrium came from. It comes from physics. So we have the supply curve. The more you supply, the price goes down. It means the supply is pushing the price down, and the demand, people buying stuff, pushing the price up. We want to know at what point we have this equilibrium. This one is pushing up and down. We will get to the point where they are equal and pushing the same down and up. We'll have the equilibrium. That we call it market equilibrium. So market at equilibrium at where a price PE, which is equilibrium, where quantity supplied equals quantity demanded. In real life means anybody that willing to pay this price will get the product. That's why we call it the price takers. Anybody is willing to sell the product at this will sell it. Okay, so now the price equilibrium is at the price where the quantity demanded equals the quantity supplied. Quantity equilibrium is where the price is at equilibrium. Okay, so that means when I say equilibrium QS equals QD, means anybody is willing, if you want to pay the price, you will get the product. If you are a consumer, if you are selling the product, you can sell the product if you are willing to sell it at the PE, at equilibrium. So now look at this. So there is two ways there are three ways actually you can find the equilibrium. The first easy one, you just look at the schedules together. You put the demand and supply schedules together, and then you will compare the quantity demanded with quantity S. You will figure out where they are equal. So at the price of 5, quantity demanded is 10 and quantity supply is 50. Are they equal? No, they are not. Then I say, okay, at the price of 4, the quantity demanded, people are willing to buy 20, companies are producing 40. Are they equal? No. Then I say, okay, at the price of 3, people are buying 30, companies are producing 30. So QS is 30, QD equals 30. So now QS equals QD, that's the equilibrium. The equilibrium is where the price equals 3, because QS is at 30 and QD is 30. At the price of 2, people are buying more, 50, but companies will not be able to produce it to produce the same amount if produce only 20. At the price of 1, it's 80 and 10. We have one equilibrium. It's 3. Now, if I this is in looking at the table. Looking at the table, I just want to figure out at what point we have QD equal QS. I figured out it's at $3. The same things for the graphs. If I build graphs, I just look where the intersection between the intersection of the supply curve and the demand curve. The only place we have the intersection is right here. So at price of 3, the quantity supplied is 30. At the price of 3, the quantity, this point belongs, what does the equilibrium means? This point is part of the supply curve, and this is part of the demand curve. That's equilibrium. Only in a market you have one equilibrium price, everything else equal. Okay, so now what happens? So I'm just going to give you one more time. So remember, every time I have schedules, I have a price, I have quantity demanded and quantity supplied. Price 1, 2, 3, 4. So the quantity, if I'm trying to find the equilibrium using a table, I'll just say, okay, quantity demanded is 50, 30, 20, 10. So quantity supplied is, price is 10, 20, let's say like 15, this is 15, 20, 30. The first thing you're gonna do to find the equilibrium, I'm just going to compare these two. I will find out where they are equal. This QD equals 20, QS is 2, then the equilibrium is 30. In the table, that's how we can find the equilibrium. If I get graph, I just go, okay, S, D, I would just say where's the intersection, that's the equilibrium. $3, for example, and the quantity is 20. The intersection, the equilibrium is here. Now, what happened if we have at the price of 1? Look at this, at the price of 1, this is things really I want you to be sure. So I have a price, quantity, I have the supply curve, the demand curve. So I know the equilibrium at PE here, the quantity equilibrium is QE. So what is the price? What if the price is below PE? Let's say P1 here. So first, I want you to know how to get the quantity supplied from the graph. How can I get the quantity supplied? I just go all the way to the graph here. This is the supply curve, go down. That's QS1. At the price of P1, I have QS1. Then I keep going to the demand curve. That's QD1. So at the price P1, I have two different quantities. One is quantity demanded and one is quantity supplied. They are not equal. But also, what happened, QD is greater than QS. Look at the difference between these two, from here to here. That's the difference. The difference between QD and QS is the distance between these 2 points. Means this is the distance between two points. So if we have a market price below the equilibrium, so if P is less than PE, we'll have QD greater than QS. We call this shortage. Now, what if I have a price? What do you think happened if we have more people? If you're selling this product and you have more people want the product than you have. So let's say you brought to the market 30 units and you have a line that has 100 people want to buy it. Well, the first thing I will start increasing the price till I get to the equilibrium, till I get to the point where they are equal. So if we have a price below the equilibrium, we have QD greater than QS, we have shortage, and it's called the market force will push the price to the equilibrium. The price will still go up. Now, that's for shortage. Shortage means just the price is below the equilibrium. So now, what happened if you have QS here, S, demand, the price equilibrium here, PE, QE. Now, let's say the price is at 5 and I'm charging 8. I am not at the equilibrium. It's PE is less than P, market price. Now, I'll see. First, I have to figure out what is QD and this what is QS, and I will compare them. So first to find, I will go all the way to the curve here. This is the demand curve, go down. This is QD. See? Whatever the quantity here is QD. Then I will go all the way to the supply curve, QS. You can see, now, in this case, PE is less than PM. We have QS greater than QD. We call it a surplus. This is the surplus from here to here. The distance between these two, it's called a surplus. Surplus means quantity supplied is greater than quantity demanded. Anytime you have the price above the equilibrium, you will have a surplus. What happens if I am like selling this product? I brought like 100 units to the market, but only have 30 people willing to buy the product from me. So what happens is that I have to start decreasing the price. So when I start decreasing the price, more people will be buying it. I also decrease my production till I get to the equilibrium. That's the law of supply and demand. Okay, so that's if the price is above the equilibrium, we call it surplus. Below the equilibrium, so let's do this. So you have the market at equilibrium, you have the supply curve, you have the demand curve, you have equilibrium, PE, QE, P1, P2. So at the equilibrium, it's equilibrium because QS equals QD. There are no shortage, no surplus. If the price at P1, you can see this is QS here, and then you have QD here. So at the price P1, it's less than equilibrium. We'll have what is called QS is less than QD. It's called shortage. Shortage means that more people want the product than you have to sell. That's the shortage. From this point here to here, we call it shortage. How much is the shortage? It will do QD minus QS. So for example, if I have here 100 and I have here 40, the shortage is 100 minus 40 will give me 60. Now, if at the price here, for example, you can see it's above the equilibrium. P2 is greater than PE. We will have that QD is less than QS. We have more in the market than we call it surplus. How much is the surplus? Is the distance between these 2 points. It will be QS minus QD. Okay, so that's if you have a shortage, the market force, they say the price will start going up. When you start increasing the price, the quantity supplied will increase. That's the law of supply. When you start increasing the price, the quantity demand will start decreasing. That's the law of demand till we reach the equilibrium. In this case, when we have a surplus, we have QS is greater than QD. The companies will start decreasing the price. When decreasing the price, the quantity demanded will start increasing, and the companies will start decreasing the quantity supplied till reach the equilibrium. So that's what's called law of the market. You hear the law of the market. Is it how the market? Sometimes market is not at the equilibrium. It's at disequilibrium. So when there is a shortage, what does that mean? It means QD is greater than QS. I can say that because the price is below the equilibrium. The price tends to rise. Okay, we showed this graphically. If the price is below the equilibrium, you have QS, QD, the price tends to go up. That's called excess of demand But if we have excessive supply, when we have the price above the equilibrium, you can see this is QD, QS, QD here, QS here, and QS is greater than QD, have a surplus, and the price, we have excessive supply or surplus, the same thing. We have excessive supply or surplus, the price tends to go down to reach the equilibrium. Every time the market in this equilibrium, the force will push him. That's what Adam Smith calls invisible hand. This is something that pushes the market to the equilibrium by itself. So if you charge more than the equilibrium, the market will force you to go back to the equilibrium. Always the market was going back. In perfect competition, always the market, he might be temporarily in this equilibrium. You might be here in shortage, or you might be in the surplus. But if you let the market work by itself, you always come back to this force, to this point, equilibrium. This is called the force of the market. So if you have a surplus, the price tends to go down. If you have a shortage or excessive demand, the price tends to go up. So you remember, so there is one that pushes the price down and one pushes the price up. And when they are equal, when you have the equilibrium, which is QD equal US, we have the equilibrium. And then something will happen in the market that changes this equilibrium situation, moves the market around, and we will reach to this equilibrium. Okay? So now we'll come back. I'm going to talk about, I'm going to give you a little bit break, give you like 15 minutes, and then we'll come back and then we'll do some examples and do some analysis. You see how you use supply and demand to do the analysis in using supply and demand. Okay? So I will stop here for, let's stop for